Today, we're going back to 1993, before the HBO show, and before George R.R. Martin became one of the most famous authors in fantasy history. We're looking at his original 3-page pitch for the series, back when he thought he could wrap the whole thing up in just 3 books. Let's start with the Big Five. Back in '93, George was convinced this was a generational saga, following 5 specific characters from childhood to adulthood: Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and 3 of the Starks, Arya, Bran, and Jon Snow. While Sansa isn't on that core list, her original arc was actually much darker than the one we know. In the first volume, which was always titled A Game of Thrones, the backbone was the same, the Lannister-Stark enmity. But the way it played out was a total 180 from what we got. In the outline, Ned Stark actually helps Catelyn and Arya escape King's Landing before he's taken. Instead of Arya living on the streets, or Catelyn heading back to Winterfell to rally the North, they were supposed to be on the run together. And then there's Sansa. This is easily one of the most shocking differences. In the original draft, Sansa actually marries Joffrey. The shockingest thing is that she bears him a son and chooses her husband and child over her own family. She becomes the member of dubious loyalty in the Stark family, a choice George says she would later bitterly regret. It's a complete reversal of the Sansa who finds her Stark identity in the later books. Meanwhile, Tyrion's role was much more centered around the Stark girls. He was meant to befriend both Sansa and Arya, while growing more and more disgusted with his own family. Bran's plot stays pretty consistent, the coma and the turn toward magic. But Robb? In the outline, there is no red wedding. Robb wins victories and even maims Joffrey on the battlefield, but eventually he dies in battle against Jaime and Tyrion. Wait, Tyrion? Yes. In the 1993 version, Tyrion Lannister actually besieges and burns Winterfell. Think about that for a second. The guy who usually protects the Starks was originally the one who was going to destroy their home. I suspect George eventually realized he couldn't get Tyrion back to Winterfell in a way that made sense, so he gave that villain role to Ramsay Bolton later on. After Winterfell burns, Catelyn, Bran, and Arya flee to the Wall. But when they get there, Jon and Benjen, who is already First Ranger in this version, can't help them because of their Night's Watch vows. This leads to a separation between Jon and Bran. They end up fleeing even further north, beyond the Wall, where they get captured by Mance Rayder. This is where we see the first glimpse of the others. In a massive twist, Catelyn Stark was actually supposed to die at the hands of the others while they were beyond the Wall. Now, let's talk about the love triangle. Because Tyrion is exiled after killing Joffrey, yes, he still kills the boy king. He joins the surviving Starks to bring down his brother Jaime. While he's with them, he falls helplessly in love with Arya. But the feeling isn't mutual. Why? Because Arya has fallen in love with Jon Snow. I'm not kidding. Jon and Arya were meant to be the central romance. They would be tormented by the fact that they are siblings, and Jon is sworn to celibacy, a passion that would continue until the secret of Jon's true parentage is revealed in the last book. It would lead to a deadly rivalry between Jon and Tyrion. It sounds like something out of a completely different genre, but it shows that George always intended for Jon's identity to be the key that unlocks the ending. Speaking of villains, let's look at Jaime. In the outline, Jaime is a monster. He follows Joffrey on the throne by simply killing everyone in the line of succession ahead of him and blaming Tyrion for the murders. Jaime was basically a combination of the Jaime and Cersei characters we eventually got. Cersei isn't even mentioned in this 3-page pitch. Finally, we have Daenerys. Her story across the Narrow Sea was meant to be the focus of the second book, A Dance with Dragons. In this version, she doesn't just wait for Drogo to die, but she actually murders him herself to avenge her brother Viserys, then stumbles on a cache of dragon eggs in the wilderness and hatches a singular dragon. With that one dragon, she conquers the Dothraki and prepares her invasion. It's a much faster, more aggressive version of her arc.
So what does all of this tell us? It shows us that while the garden has grown in ways George never expected, the major conflicts remain the same. The Game of Thrones, the Targaryen invasion, and the battle for the Dawn. The Big Five are still the heart of the story, and their fates are likely still locked in George's head, even if the path to get there has changed. It's fascinating to see how a singular dragon in the Game of Thrones pitch can eventually grow into the massive epics we know today. It's all about the evolution of the idea. But I want to hear from you. Which of these original plot points do you wish stayed in the books? Are you glad the Jon and Arya romance was scrapped? Or do you think a King Jaime would have been a better villain than Cersei? Comment all your opinions.